Thornton, and I am delighted to be your MC for today. It's my very first time, so bear with me. We would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri and Bunurong people of the Kulin Nation, and also pay our respects to elders past and present and future, and extend that respect to all Indigenous Australians present today. Thanks today will be given by past President Robert Fisher, followed by the Loyal Toast presented by President Chris, my neighbour. Please ensure your glass is charged.
Thank you, Robert. Rotarians and guests, a toast to Australia and Rotary International. Australia and Rotary International. With regret, Vale, Beverley Brock OAM. And I'll now read the obituary prepared by Bruce Davidson. Bev Brock joined the Rotary Club of Melbourne on April 5, 2006 with the classification of public speaking. She came to the club with a high profile. In fact, she was a celebrity. Bev was born in Stoneville near Perth, the third of 7 children. She trained as a teacher, specialising in science and home economics. Bev's life was characterised by highs and lows, no doubt contributing to her strength and invincibility. At age 22, she dived into shallow water and broke her neck and was told she would never walk again. After little more than a month, with plaster covering half her head and her neck, she was back to basketball and dancing. That's the Bev we love. She dedicated her life to her family and supporting her partner Peter in his motor racing career. She was regularly photographed at the track and in the pits. She produced 3 films about him and a definitive book. In fact, she wrote 4 books in all, one being an autobiography. She had plenty to write about. Later came a heartbreaking and very public separation from Peter, and then after his death in a rally car accident, a messy and costly legal battle. Around the club, Bev was a breath of fresh air. She was so open and engaging, making everyone feel like a best friend. She served on the board and was a vice president. She was a very popular president-elect for the convention year, but had to step aside due to illness. She did a brilliant job as MC of our Memorial Centenary celebration. She served as director of club meetings, program chair, new member chair, and she also enjoyed hands-on activities, volunteering for Second Bite from its inception, and organised our first ever White Elephant sale. She was appropriately recognised by the club on many occasions, including the 4th Bridge Award, the Rotary Melbourne Mentoring Award, and our highest honour, Life Membership. Bev was also involved with multiple charities, earning her an AOM in 2016. She founded and ran the Peter Brock Foundation from 1997 to 2005. And then later she was on the board of the Skyline Foundation and was patron of the Lighthouse Foundation. Some 2.5 years ago, Bev was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer and died last Sunday, leaving behind 3 children, 7 beloved grandchildren, and a host of loved ones, many of whom she helped and supported in some way. She inspired us all, and we miss her dearly. Let us honour Bev with a moment of silence. Thank you. As we don't have details on a memorial, we will advise members when they are published. Please be seated. We'll be breaking for lunch and we will reconvene around 1:10 p.m. Please enjoy the fellowship and meal. Members, visitors and guests, it is my great pleasure to welcome you to our 36th meeting of this Rotary year, and Chantelle, our 5,027th all-time meeting in our 103rd year. It's wonderful to see you all here today for our special breast cancer awareness lunch. We're excited to announce our Rotary Melbourne fundraising campaign in support of Breast Cancer Network Australia. With your generous support, we can achieve our starting target of $2,500. Every donation, no matter the size, will contribute to the success of this important initiative and support women battling the disease. Please join us in our fundraising efforts to help us create a better tomorrow for all. If you haven't already made a donation via Humanitix, you can donate directly using the QR code on your tables, and also will be in the next bulletin. Our guest speaker is Dr Channelle Thornton, breast cancer surgeon. Channelle will be more fully introduced later in the program by our Chair of the Day, Peter Jones. In the meantime, would you please join me acknowledging and making them both welcome. As a club guest, we have Kenza Dairy. Kenza will shortly be inducted into the club and is accompanied by friend and colleague, Sarah Bartels. Welcome. Would you please acknowledge and make them both welcome. We have other visiting Rotarians, visitors and guests of members. I invite you and your host to stand when your name is announced and ask that you please remain standing to enable the club to welcome you in a collective manner. All right, I'll read out the list. Will Abdo, a guest of myself. Carlos Medrano, guest of myself. No, it's not the President's list. However, Benny Robinson, a guest of myself and former member of the Rotary Club of Beverley Hills. So imagine the celebrities Benny would have to deal with. Costas Iothes, guest of myself. Nushan Anguru, guest of Bernie McIntosh. Pierre Latorre, also guest of Bernie McIntosh. Maria Riechez, also guest of Bernie McIntosh. Frank Kilney, guest of Eleanor Olibere. Now, before we have a number of visitors joining us online: Pauline White, Silvana Akruri, Michelle Kelly and David Perabo. And international visiting Rotarians, we have from the Rotary Club of Niagara Falls, Ontario, John and Linda Bayer. And we also have David Fernie from the Rotary Club of Pakenham, DG-elect Michael Lapina, Pini Kapoor from the Rotary Club of Agra, India, and Mini Mehra, also from the Rotary Club of Agra, India. So please join me in welcoming you all to our meeting today. Please be seated. A truly international affair. Now I'd like to call Kenza Dairy to come forward for induction into membership of the club, and I also call Kenza's sponsor, Sana Malik, to introduce her to the club. Okay, so Sana, over to you. So just a couple of minutes.
Yeah, cool. Thank you, Chris. It is with pleasure I welcome Kenza Dari for membership to the club. Kenza holds the position of Corporate Partnerships Manager. She will have the classification of Health Science Corporate Partnerships. She will be the member of the Turak 1 group, which is arguably the best group, in my opinion. And she will be known as Kenza.
I'll read the induction charge now. So, Kenza Dairy, we welcome you as a member to the Rotary Club of Melbourne. Today you enter a fellowship of 1.2 million members in 37,000 countries in 37,000 clubs. So I'm being an Elon Musk here, I'm looking at Mars and beyond. In 221 countries as at February, which embraces the internationality of Rotary. We believe that you have those personal qualities that will ensure our principles and organisation will be safe in your keeping. The Rotary badge you will receive in a moment and wear with pride indicates your commitment to the principles to which we aspire. We expect that as you wear this badge, you will become an ambassador from us to the community in which you live and work, and we ask that you convey our ideals and principles of service in your work and personal life. We look forward to you sharing with us as we pursue the Rotary ideal of service above self. With this expectation, I offer you the right hand of Rotary Fellowship and ask members rise and join me in welcoming Kenza to the membership of the club. Thank you. I call on Sana to present the Rotary pin.
Thank you so much, Sana.
And now ask Kenza to respond. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. It is an absolute honor to be here today, joining an organization that does so much to improve the lives, not just to the community here in Melbourne, but also seeing the amazing work that you do across Australia and overseas. I just wanted to thank President Chris, Sana, Bernie, Amit, Deb, Mary, and so many others who've always welcomed me with kindness, with friendship to the events that I've attended over the past few months. And I really look forward to playing a small part in putting service before self and hopefully having an impact in the community in which we live. Thank you so much again.
Thank you, Kenza, and welcome again. I'm advised our guest speaker needs to attend to clinic at 1:45. As such, we'll go straight to the main presentation and come back to club and committee notices. And now it's my pleasure to call on Chair of the Day, Peter Jones, to more fully introduce today's speaker. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, and good afternoon, and welcome everybody, particularly those that are online. It is a great pleasure that I can introduce today's guest speaker. I've got a theory in life. Everyone in this room knows someone who has been impacted by breast cancer. A family member, a friend, a work colleague. I'm not going to ask you to put up your hands, but I'm sure everyone here knows someone along those lines. 1 in 7 women are diagnosed with breast cancer in their lifetime. To take us through what all this means, I'd like to welcome a lady that I have had the pleasure of working with at the Epworth Hospital for the last over 10 years now with their fundraising for the foundation. So would you please welcome today breast cancer surgeon specialist Dr Channelle Thornton. My apologies.
Thank you, Peter and Chris, for having me. I actually remember going to the mother and also the father and daughter events, and my father was also a fellow Rotarian at the Rotary Club of Launceston, Burnie and Ulverston and Kings Meadows. And I remember those evenings as wonderful evenings to see actually what my dad was doing on a Wednesday night when he was coming home late, visiting all his friends and all of the fabulous things they did for the community. Thanks for asking me to speak. It's lovely to see some familiar faces in the room. Hello, Steve and Mandy. And I think probably my presentation today might be a little bit lowbrow, looking around at all the incredible people here today. So please bear with me because I wasn't really sure what I was specifically supposed to speak about. But what I thought I'd do is start with who I am. My name is Dr Channelle Thornton and I am a specialist breast cancer surgeon, but I'm also a wife, mother, friend and board woman, and I identify as a woman. I am originally actually from Tasmania, and at the age of 6 I had a dream, and my dream was that I would like to be a doctor. My grandfather gave me a small doctor's kit when I was 6 years of age, and then I went on to study at the University of Tasmania, and I was a very committed student and would spend every waking hour of my day trying to get the best marks that I could to be the best doctor that I could. And so subsequently I became dux of the medical school and I won 8 university prizes. During my time at med school I received an I did an honours degree for my first degree, Bachelor of Medical Science, and I got a scholarship to the University of Hong Kong. So I went from the small island of Tasmania to the University of Hong Kong to study sepsis, so E. coli sepsis, and I was basically in a laboratory isolating myocytes or cardiac cells from shocked and non-shocked rats. And what I realised in that time is that research is very hard. And that I love to shop, because Hong Kong was obviously a fabulous place to shop, and that I'm probably not really cut out to be in a little laboratory in the dark for many, many hours of the day. But what it did teach me is that, you know, really the root of all medical training comes from research, and most of what we do is actually not evidence-based. But in order to complete wonderful research that is evidence-based, it costs a lot of money and it takes a lot of time. And so what you're doing here today really is fabulous, because it's helping raise funds so that we can complete these research projects, and hopefully we can complete them in Australia, and that we don't lose significant amounts of our intellectual property overseas, and we keep our amazing scientists with us here in Australia. I then went on to become a Fellow of the Royal Australasian College of Surgeons, and I completed a fellowship at the Peter MacCallum Cancer Centre in breast cancer surgery and melanoma, and now I just specialise in breast cancer surgery only, and I'm founder of Specialist Breast Cancer Surgery and Specialist Cosmetic Centre. So how did I come about becoming a surgeon? Well, basically, my aunt had breast cancer when I was 10 years of age. She was my favourite aunt, and she lived in a small rural community, and she worked in a bank, and she had lymph nodes that were involved in her armpit, and her GP kept saying the reason her arm was sore was because she worked on a computer. And so she had a late diagnosis and subsequently died, and I grew up knowing that my maternal grandmother had had a mastectomy, my great-grandmother had breast cancer, subsequently 3 other aunts and a maternal first cousin all had breast cancer. And I thought, look, I don't want it to be like that for other women. I think early diagnosis is important, and particularly in the rural areas. And I eventually came to Melbourne, and in fact I studied paediatrics at the Royal Children's Hospital in my first year after internship. And during that time I'd bought a small apartment in South Yarra because I loved Melbourne, and I didn't have any money, so I thought it really needs new floorboards. I'm going to need to do a locum. So I went back to Tasmania to the Mersey Hospital in Latrobe, a hospital that my grandfather's construction company had actually built, and I did a locum there. And during the time I was there, one evening, it was very late on a Saturday night, and an elderly gentleman came in with an obstructed bladder, and he had prostate cancer, but his bladder was very, very full, and anyone that's had an obstructed bladder will recognise that this is a pain that morphine doesn't help. And he was in total agony, and I needed to try and work out how I could ship him out. Anyway, it was the weather had come in, the planes were not available to transfer the patient, the ambulances were busy looking after people that were doing blockies on a Saturday night in Devonport, and the parents of the family of this elderly gentleman were all intoxicated and said, look, love, I've had a few beers, I'm not taking him to the nearest hospital, it's about 200 k's away, you'll have to sort it out. So I got some old books out. In those days there wasn't really a lot of internet, and I dusted those off, and I found out, you know, I could put a suprapubic catheter in, which means putting a catheter into the bladder to release the urine. So I said to them, do you have a kit for this? And they said, we might have one, doctor, we'll go down and have a look. So they went down and found this old box, and they brought it back. And I was sort of reading these instructions, and finally I worked out, you know, how to put the catheter in. And when they say, you know, the first cut is the deepest, it definitely is. I made that incision, I struck the catheter down, pulled the catheter out, and the urine went poof. And the man literally jumped off the table and he said, I love you so much. Thank you. He said, you've saved my life. I can't tell you what difference you've made to me. And I thought, wow, surgery, it's amazing. It's so tangible. Like, the patients really love what you've done for them. You can fix a problem today and move the patient on. I thought, you know what? I will actually want to be a surgeon. I had this epiphany. So I came back to the Royal Children's Hospital rather sheepishly and said, look, I know you've got an amazing job, and I've been offered a position the following year, which only 8 people out of 150 applicants had been given. And I said, look, I'm so sorry, I don't want the job, I'm going to be a surgeon. And the director looked at me and she said, if you've made an error, she said, I'll make it my way in life to ensure that you'll never receive a job in paediatrics anywhere in Australia again. So make sure you've made the right decision. And I said, look, I've made the right decision. And so that's how I came on to go and become a surgeon. So I then subsequently had a position at Epworth Hospital, and I had been working at Epworth as a hospital medical officer while I was doing some lecturing at Monash University and starting for my first part, and so I had an affiliation with Epworth, and I didn't mind sort of running down Punt Road early in the morning. So I decided, I'd ask the CEO if I could get a position there. Subsequently, they had a lovely ball that Peter hosted, and one of the patrons and big donors had a choking incident, and I was called in to help resuscitate, and the CEO saw me and said, look, would you come and work with us? So I did get a very good position. And I went there, and then I started thinking, look, I'm growing out of my rooms now, I need new rooms, and this little house came up. It was the old AAA sex clinic in 69 Erin Street, Richmond, and so I bought this little clinic in my super fund because I was desperate for rooms, and then about 3 months later, the building I actually wanted came up for sale, and I didn't have any money left, so I rang my husband up one day and said, do you want a building in Erin Street? And he promptly hung up on me and said, no, I don't. And so I rang back and said, well, look, happy wife, happy life. If I go, a business partner, would you support me? And he said, okay, if I have to. So one cold day in Melbourne, about 3 months after I'd bought the first property, he bought this property. So now we have 2 buildings in Erin Street, and 69 Erin Street I now have psychologists working in. Because during COVID that became a very significant problem, that people needed to see psychologists more than they needed to see a surgeon. And eventually I'm going to make that property into accommodation for my interstate, international and rural patients and their families. And 45 we run a specialist breast cancer surgery and specialist cosmetic centre, and so they're the 2 properties that we have. So if you get breast cancer, you can come to the pink door. You'll notice that there's no signs apart from the one on my car, which I don't drive now because I have 2 children and I need a big car with car seats. But there's nothing that says cancer in my practice. You're coming to a place of hope, and it's supposed to be an environment where you come there and you feel like, you might just be coming to visit a friend, to take away the scare tactics that occur when someone gets told they've got breast cancer. So as Peter said, breast cancer is really a modern epidemic, and unfortunately the rates of breast cancer are rocketing on in the Western world. It is the most common cancer diagnosed in Australia, but many of you will be shocked to know that more people in Australia do die of heart disease, and it is of interest that the risk factors that you have for heart disease, like sedentary life, alcohol, cigarette smoking, poor fruit and vegetable intake, are also highly linked with breast cancer. And so when I talk to patients about, breast cancer, the reality is that our drugs are so good now that most people will be dying of other problems, not breast cancer. And so the survival rates are actually excellent in that 92% of all ladies that diagnosed with breast cancer will be alive for 5 to 10 years and even longer in our community now. The most important risk factor is female. About 1 in 100 men will get breast cancer. And so they will still present in very similar ways to women, but often with locally advanced or bigger cancers, because obviously they don't have a lot of breast tissue and they may not recognise that they have a lump in the breast. Late age of pregnancy and having no children and not breastfeeding those, or not having your children before the age of 30, which is most people in our demographic now. Using HRT for more than 5 years, and I'm talking about combined HRT. Having multiple family members with breast or ovarian cancer. So it's important for people to know their family history, both on the paternal and the maternal side. So 50% of our genes from our mum, 50% of genes from our dad, and so it's important to know those. Ashkenazi Jewish background and a prior radiation exposure to the chest and neck. These are some of the things that increase the risk for breast cancer. Most women present with no symptoms whatsoever, and that's due to our intensive screening protocols that we have in Australia. 70% of women will present with no symptoms. Of the women that do present though, some of them will have a lump, and it may not actually be a lump. It may just be a thickening in the breast. It may be a change in the size, contour or shape of the breast, tethering the skin, rash the nipple or lump under the armpit. And so I would challenge every lady in the room to know what your breasts look like, and also men, if you've got female partners, make sure you know what your what your partner's breast looks like. Because it is surprising, many partners will actually find the problem more than the individual patient. What do you do if you're diagnosed? First of all, don't panic. And I mean, everyone says that, but we actually do have good evidence to say their immune system is intimately related to the way we fight cancer. And so there are a lot of studies looking at women that have breast cancer to see if we can give them a beta blocker to slow down their heart rate at the time of diagnosis, to see if it will impact on the way that the immune system fights the cancer after we harvest the tumour. And we know that that does actually work. And so the whole concept of my practice being in this environment that's not a medicalised environment is to try and see, can we make the immune system calmer to try and ensure that the immune system will fight harder to beat this cancer. Always select your surgeon wisely. Make sure that your case is discussed in a multidisciplinary team meeting, and take someone with you. Try someone that's a great listener, someone that's a good note taker. Take them with you, and if you're not happy, get a second opinion. If you're young, don't forget to consider the genetics of this problem, the cosmesis, and also fertility. When you're diagnosed, mainly it will be through imaging. So most women will have a mammogram. A point I would make about breast screening in Australia, they don't offer the best type of mammogram, which is mammogram with tomosynthesis. They'll only offer the old-fashioned digital mammography, and so that can lull women into a false sense of security that have dense breasts. Did you want to ask a question? Oh, no. The point about that is that if you do have a symptom, don't go to breast screen. Go and see your doctor and get a diagnostic mammogram, 3D imaging with tomosynthesis, and get an ultrasound of both breasts. Some women in Australia will be offered MRI, and in fact, every woman in Australia is now eligible for a beatable MRI as of only 3 years ago, if they are diagnosed with breast cancer and there's a diagnostic dilemma in terms of how big it might be, or if it's multifocal or if it's bilateral. Then women will go on to get a biopsy. We can do the biopsy in the bedside if the lump is big enough. It's sort of like getting your ears pierced. A little tiny core biopsy needle goes to the tumour. That little bit of tissue then goes off to the specialist breast pathologist, and then a result is achieved. Staging investigations are usually done because most ladies say, look, I don't really care if I've got a cancer here, Chantelle, I know you can fix that. I'm more worried that I don't have anything else in the rest of my body. And so most women will undergo a PET scan or a CT scan and a bone scan. They'll have some bloods. Their case will be discussed in an MDM. Anyone with cancer in Australia, regardless of type, should have their case discussed in an MDM. There's a Medicare item number for that, so if you do have a diagnosis of cancer, ask your surgeon, has my case been discussed and reviewed in a multidisciplinary team meeting, where an entire team of surgeons, medical oncologists, radiation oncologists, the pathologist, the radiologist involved in the case, they'll all come together and they'll discuss your case. And we do that once a week at Epworth, and I chair the meeting there. Then you'll be sent to a specialist breast cancer surgeon and you'll have a tailored treatment plan. Most patients will then undergo surgery followed by something else, either chemotherapy if the cancer is aggressive or looks to be aggressive. If they keep their breast, as in breast conserving surgery, they'll have radiotherapy, or if they have a mastectomy, they may be able to omit radiotherapy. Most cancers in Australia in the postmenopausal age bracket are estrogen receptor positive, and so women will often need to take a medication to inhibit their estrogen for 5 to 7 years after the surgery. The important thing that's happened even in my career is that mostly now we are looking at cancers and we're typing the cancer, and we're able to get such incredible detail about individual cancers now that we can say, is this a cancer that is best treated by neoadjuvant chemotherapy? So giving the chemotherapy first. And I think probably in the not too distant future, I'll probably be able to join Rotary Club because I'll have more time to come in the evening events, and I might end up getting a job at Dior, because I probably won't have a job, because I don't think surgeons will be intimately involved in operating on patients with cancer. It's a big statement, but I think the drugs are so good now that, you know, often I'm going to theatre now on patients that have triple negative breast cancers or HER2 positive breast cancers. I'm going in, I'm taking out the clip that I put in at diagnosis, and I'm finding there is no disease left. So the patient's getting a complete pathological response. So then you've got to think, well, in the future, will I need to go back and do that surgery at all? Or will our imaging be good enough to say this woman has cleared the disease? So that is quite exciting. And so there's a real shift now towards giving medication or drugs first rather than doing surgery. And it's really helpful because it does allow us to improve the cosmesis, because we're shrinking the problem down, reducing people's need to have mastectomies by decreasing the tumour size and improving cosmesis. This is something I was talking about in regards to the issue with breast density. You'll see that on this side of the screen, the breast is very white. That's a woman that has very dense breasts, lots of ducts and lots of lobules. The opposite photograph is a woman that has probably 50% density. A breast cancer looks white. So if I put a breast cancer into the mammogram, which is this CC or the head-to-toe view where we squash head to toe, I won't be able to see it. And so in America, they have this program called How Dense Are You? So all women know their level of breast density. And so good radiology reports in Australia should tell women you have moderate to severe density, and so you need to consider doing an ultrasound, or you need to consider an MRI, and you must also have a 3D image. So this just shows you that breast cancer has been camouflaged by this very severe breast density, and we know that breast density is also an independent risk factor for breast cancer, and it's something to do with the biology of the breast cells, and not just from the camouflage effect itself. This is breast conserving surgery, whereby we basically localise the cancer. There are two ways to localise a cancer that can't be felt, and that's either putting a fishing wire, a hook wire in, or a little scout device, which is a reflective device, which I'll talk about a little bit later. And then we usually take the cancer out through cosmetically acceptable incisions. Always ask your surgeon, where will the incision be? Avoid the décolletage or the social area of the breast. You might want to wear a nice blouse at some stage, and you don't want to be reminded every day of a big incision on your breast. So have that discussion with your surgeon. And then usually we will take the cancer out, and real time we'll take a photograph of the trident. I think Peter might have been involved in helping fund for this with my friend Jackie Marie. And we see in the operating theatre, have we got macroscopically clear margins? Can we now proceed to closing the patient? What are the types of mastectomy? Well, in the past, you probably all heard about the Housestead or the radical mastectomy, whereby we'd involve removing the breast and the pectoralis muscle. Very awful cosmetic outcome, and also quite difficult from a functional perspective. What about the present? Some women will still opt, particularly elderly women, and not to be ageist, but some of them will say, well, look, my breasts have done what they need to do. I'll have a mastectomy and I'll wear a prosthesis in my bra. But most of my younger patients will opt for a skin-sparing mastectomy, whereby we will keep the entire skin envelope, including the nipple and areola complex, and then we will put something in to reform or refashion the breast. So either their own tissue or an implant. And I think the future of surgery will probably be minimally invasive surgery. We might also consider bringing out the robot at some stage as well. This is the old-fashioned radical mastectomy. You can see terrible cosmetic and functional outcome, and then the simple mastectomy. And those women can go for a delayed reconstruction if they wish, but the cosmetic outcome will never be the same. So patients need to be counselled that if they are going to have a simple mastectomy and they wish to come back and do the tummy-style operation to remove the fat from the abdomen and make a new breast, I can never make it look as good, because the cosmesis is always held in keeping the breast, the skin. So this is the breast made up of ducts and lobules with fat, and this is the one operation, the mastectomy or the skin-sparing mastectomy, where we ask the patients, please eat a few pizzas, don't lose weight, because the subcutaneous tissue, we want it to be broad, we want it to be thick to get a better result and have good blood supply for the patient. So we're basically taking out all of the contents of inside the breast there, and then putting something else inside. This is a lady that's already had, I should say, if you're a bit queasy, lucky you've already had your main course. It was a chicken's breast, was it? No, I mean, this lady's already had a breast mastopexy or reduction style surgery. She's got scars from that. This is the sort of the legs of the patient, the head of the patient at the top. The breast comes out, gets marked up, scrapings from behind the back of the nipple, and then the implant goes in, or the fat from the tummy. Immediate breast reconstruction post-mastectomy is oncologically safe. The recurrence rate is an order of a couple of %. It improves women's psychological health and their self-esteem and body image. It's insensate, so it doesn't have sensory or sexual function, but it looks like your own breast. This lady's had implant-style reconstruction, and the lady on the right-hand side had the nipples and areolas removed, and then she'll get a nipple reconstruction or a tattoo. This woman in the top corner has had her abdomen removed. We call it the deep inferior epigastric perforator artery, or the DIEP. And basically what we do is almost like an abdominoplasty. So we take that tissue from the abdomen, and instead of throwing that tissue in the bin or that fat in the bin, we bring it up and we do microsurgery to insert that underneath the breast skin. This is like an organ transplant. It is a massive operation, can take 10 to 13 hours, but it is amazing surgery because that reconstruction will grow with the patient. It will get bigger when the patient gets bigger. It will lose weight when the patient loses weight. And it will feel like your own breast tissue. So this is incredible surgery. And as you can see, you couldn't tell that that lady's had a reconstruction. The lady in the bottom corner's had the old-fashioned tram-style reconstruction. You can see the issue with that is that it never looks as good as the DIEP, and it involves some of the muscle as well. But you will get a scar from hip to hip with this procedure, but it's amazing surgery. I think if you're considering reconstruction, you need to think about the patient though, and so some women that are not fit enough cannot undergo the DIEP or the DIEP flap reconstruction, and so the patient selection is very important. As I said, we may be using the robot at some stage in the future to do subcutaneous mastectomies. The incisions that we use are actually quite small anyway, but this is something that has got some coverage in the media of recent time. This is my MDM. I was talking about my team, and I put John in there. He's our cleaner, because since COVID, we've realised that, you know, people like our cleaners are extremely important to ensure that our businesses can run smoothly. And we have a full, mainly female team, apart from John, our cleaner, and he only comes after hours. But he is a very important member of our team, and there are a couple of our specialist breast care nurses. Our other surgeon, Dr Ananya Chakrabarti, who is both a breast and reconstructive surgeon with a PhD in breast cancer recurrence. And so we're the only centre in Victoria offering breast and reconstructive surgery under one roof, and our cosmetic nurse injector, Veena. Teamwork, I think, is very important. Patient-centred values are important. I think everyone should make sure that they're getting a great team when they go for their breast cancer treatment. I've put in there Dr Anne. She's our breast physician. So we have a program, a survivorship program in the rooms, because most people after they've undergone treatment for breast cancer surgery will not need someone like me. They'll need a physician. Surgeons are not the best people to treat people for the long term with breast cancer. And so after breast cancer, we're talking about diet, exercise, alcohol reduction, stopping cigarette smoking, a whole change of lifestyle, everything to boost your immune system. And so that's what our breast care physician, Dr Anne, does. I use technology in and out of the operating theatre, and I use a program called Clinic to Cloud because it allows me to access all of my patient files 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, wherever I am in the world. It also allows patients their own portal, and they can access all of their own files, their own letters, their own investigations. And this is the Trident mobile X-ray given to us by one of our donors that was always worried that I was coming home too late at night, that allows us to X-ray the patient's specimen in the operating theatre without the need to go down to the radiology suite. This is a technique called the Scout Reflector Radar device, which was done, I did the first of these in Australia in 2021. And it allows us to identify small tumours by putting a small reflector into the tumour, so omits the need to use the wires. And it is quite expensive technology, and it will allow us, however, to access tumours where we couldn't access them before. And this is the first patient in Australia that I did that on. Her name is Jodie, and she had a nasty, well, it was not nasty, but it was a difficult place to get to, recurrence, right underneath the collarbone in a very hairy area or scary area, because a lot of big vessels in that area. and I used that Scout device to put the reflector into the area. The radiologist did that, and it allowed me to localise that problem. And she has 2 young sons, and she's doing very well now. And that would have been a site that we wouldn't have been able to operate on previously, and we're able to remove her tumour, which is great news. And that was the Australian first of the Scout. What is the future of breast cancer treatment? I know I've said it once, I'm going to say it twice, I feel like an auctioneer, but it's drugs. It's definitely the drugs. It's not my surgery. Surgeons think they cure cancer. They don't. They just take the problem out to give it to the intelligent doctors that tell you what drugs you need to fix the problem. And then they talk to the scientists that tell you this is really the future of medicine. This was me a couple of years ago on the ABC News talking about the RX Ponder results of the San Antonio trial, which was looking at an Oncotype DX test, which is an investigation that we now also have in Australia that allows a 25 gene assay of an individual's tumour to see what their recurrence score is. And we now know that women who have low recurrence scores and have postmenopausal breast cancer can go without chemotherapy. And it was evidence-based, and it allowed us to avoid chemotherapy in many women. So we often use the EndoPredict test or the Oncotype or the genetic assay to help us look at women's tumours to know what extra treatment is required. Also, there are many drugs now looking at prolonging survival for women, particularly those with triple negative breast cancer, and that was with our Minister for Finance who was released that drug in April 2022. And I think this is one thing, breast cancer has been very proactive as a disease and as a community in ensuring that we are able to access incredible medications for women, but we are still behind from the rest of the world. And so I think it is something that we continually have to canvass government for. What about prevention? And I always talk about it at every event I go to, because this is not rocket science. This is just what our grandparents taught us. What do we know that is evidence-based to reduce the risk of breast cancer recurrence and to reduce the risk of breast cancer? From a dietary perspective, 5 servings of vegetables a day, 2 of fruit, 240 minutes of exercise a week. It's a lot. So it's 150 minutes of aerobic exercise, 90 minutes of core and strength work, not smoking. Alcohol, unfortunately there is no safe number. I do actually have to confess, I do like to have a glass or 2 of champagne. But the thing is that the health data and the Cancer Council of Australia are saying no more than 10 glasses on 7 days of the week, which is actually higher than what they used to say. But we know that there is good evidence that more than 3 glasses per week will increase your risk of breast cancer by up to 15% over your lifetime. HRT, as I said, not taking it for more than 5 years, having lots of children, and then your immune system, I couldn't prove it before, but just being happy, making sure that you make decisions for your own happiness are important. In my practice, we're trying to make it a happy environment, even though it's probably the worst day of a woman's life and her family's life when she comes to visit me. We have the living table there, which the blacksmiths from Mona in Tasmania made for me, and a backyard where the patients can sit so they don't feel like they're in a consulting room environment. I use art and fashion to help enhance the experience of specialist breast cancer surgery and to make women feel valued at the practice. What are my final closing tips to you? 1, if you've got a lump, get it investigated. Make sure you get a biopsy. If you're not happy with the discussion you've had with the doctor, get another opinion. Mostly women, however, are asymptomatic. So if you're over the age of 40, have a mammogram. And some women need to be aware that you can have a breast lump and you can have entirely normal imaging, particularly for lobular breast cancer. And so if you have a change in your breast and your mammogram and ultrasound is normal, it doesn't mean you don't have breast cancer. Make sure you get that investigated. Silicone implants do not increase your risk of breast cancer. There is an unusual type of cancer called anaplastic large cell lymphoma, which can be associated with silicone implants. It's had a lot of press in the media, but it doesn't cause breast cancer. Now, what about breast health? Knowing what is important for you is most important, and so I thought it might be nice to call upon our President, Chris, now. I know we've only just met, but I'm just wondering if you would mind if I could demonstrate a breast examination on you. I promise not to derobe you, President. Should I call him Mr. President? I'm not sure. Come on up. Okay, I'm not taking his jacket off. It was beautiful brigade here.
I did invite my wife to this event.
Chris and I have only just met. Okay, all right. So, I've had a story, is that what I say? Oh, no, thank you. Yeah, that's good. Okay, so first of all, when you're at home tonight, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you derobe, okay? You need to be in a light room. It's got to be, if you have a small, dark bathroom, as many people do it in another place. Do it where you've got great natural light and a good mirror. You need to expose from the collarbone all the way to the inframammary region. So if you've got long hair, pull your hair back. If you're wearing a necklace, take the necklace off. You must start with inspection, first of all. There's so much that you can learn from the old-fashioned end of the bed test. And what you need to do is you need to look at both breasts. So pop your hands on your hips. So first of all, with your hands on the hips, so you contract your muscles, contract the pec muscles to see, is there any change in the size or the symmetry of my breasts? Are my breasts symmetrical? Is one breast bigger than the other or smaller? Does it sit higher or lower? Is that normal for me? Was it always like that? And then elevate your arms. The purpose of elevation is to see, if you've got a mass inside the breast, you will see pulling or tethering of the skin. It may be subtle, there may just be a dimple, but there might be a flattening of the outer contour of the breast. And that is a very subtle sign that you can often find just by looking at the breast. So inspection is so important. Look at the nipple and areola, see, is there a rash on the nipple and areola? Is there any changes to the nipple? Is there any nipple discharge? Then we move on to inspection. So always look before you touch. So we move on to using the right arm to palpate the left breast and vice versa. So I normally start like the breast as a clock face, starting at 12 o'clock, moving my fingers down from the collarbone all the way down to in front of the nipple and areola. Don't forget the nipple and areola. Rotate around the breast. So we go all the way around the breast in a clockwise fashion. So when we look at the breast, we normally say the lump's 2 o'clock, 3 centimetres nipple, which on the left breast would be out here, 3 centimetres nipple. We always include the axillary tail or the armpit in this investigation that we do. So you would think it would be easier to palpate, your armpit by putting your arm out. No, that's incorrect. Let your arm go nice and floppy, and what we need to do is bring the right arm up and put it underneath high up into the axilla or the armpit, if you like. So you allow yourself, with your arm floppy by your side, to feel right up in there. Feel the lymph nodes. Do they feel normal? Is there any abnormality to that? We do the same thing on the other side. Very good. So start to go all the way around, and then here we go. Okay? And what you're looking for is dimpling, tethering, change in size, change in the symmetry of the breast, anything that's different from you, and report that and know what's normal for you. So we used to talk about women palpating their breast or self-breast examination every month at the same time. We don't really talk about that anymore. There's not much evidence for it. It's more about being self-breast aware. Breast asymmetry is absolutely normal. The only women that have symmetrical breasts are extremely lucky, 1% of the population, or those that have been operated on by a plastic or cosmetic surgeon. So asymmetry of the breast is normal. That's why I have that installation in my consulting room to show patients that. And I think that's probably about it for today. Thank you. I don't know how to get that back. I think there was no more slides. I really like to always take away something when I go to, listen to a guest speaker. So I'm hoping that examination has taught you something. I think if you listen to a speaker, you need to take home at least one tip. And I think that my examination is really the most important thing that I'd like you to take home today. Thank you.
Well, that was a new one. Okay, we're online, so I'm not going to say anything inappropriate. But suffice to say that the practical element here, I think, also brought home the important issue of rigour, vigilance, and also the involvement of your partner as well, both in the pre-diagnosis phase as well as what happens afterwards. So would you all join me in thanking Dr Thornton for her fantastic presentation. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, that's great.
We've also got a gift here, which I'm not sure how it's going to fit in, but if you like your exercise or you like staying home on a cold night,
yes,
some 200% Rotary socks, special convention socks, arranged by one of our members, Phil Endesby. Where's Phil? He's down the back there.
Thank you.
From Wilderness Wear.
Yeah.
Good Tasmanian, yes.
Fellow Tasmanian, I love it. Two heads are better than one.
Thank you very much. So we also thank you for your time. We know your time is precious, and we're really thankful also that you're providing service above self to the community. So again, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, now I'll call upon our Club Foundation Director, Carol Bond, to give us a few words about the Rotary Foundation Scholars.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'll keep this short and sharp. Within the International Services portfolio, for which I serve as director, we have three streams of activity. One is the International Programs Committee, of which Peter Addison is the chair for this year. Then we have the Rotary International Foundation. So I actually think I just recruited somebody to help with that particular piece today at lunch, so that's wonderful. And the third one is, and the one I want to bring to your attention today, is the Rotary Peace Fellowship scholarships. We already have a young person we're putting forward for a global grant who's an absolute treasure, a powerhouse looking to go to school in the UK, has written a magnificent application, but we now need to be looking around for people for the Rotary Peace Fellowships. Excuse me. I joke with Bob Fells that he did such a good job with the Rotary Peace Fellows that I came to Australia because I wanted to be a Rotary Peace Fellow. He's Bob Fells and the tireless group of people working on the Rotary Peace Fellowships is exactly the reason why I'm here today. And because I was a United States citizen at the time, I could travel to Australia and take the course of study at the University of Queensland. I now, all of you know Tanya Militek at this point. She was one of the first people that the Rotary Club of Melbourne sponsored to be a Peace Fellow. You may also remember Jonathan Coleb, who's a colleague of mine at RMIT. He was a Peace Fellow as well. In fact, after talking with Jonathan and Tanya, I found that there's like 45 Peace Fellows in and around Melbourne, and we're going to try to get them together for one of the evening meetings around September, which is the month of peace. But many of you would say, well, I don't know anybody who would be a Peace Fellow, and I will challenge you and say, yes, you do. Many of you are involved with other charities. You're involved with Red R. You're involved with the Fellowship of St. Lawrence. You're involved with any of the number of the community groups that are around. We're looking for people between their mid-20s to mid-40s, someone who's had a history of working in human development, philanthropy, medicine, education, has a social service focus to their career, who would like to be fully funded for 2 years of postgraduate study at one of the 6 universities, not University of Queensland if they're Australian, that host the Peace Fellowship program. So if we have reorganized the website with the help of past President Adrian Nelson and Joe Mavros, it's easier to find the information there. You can always contact me. The deadline for applying is May 15th, but we would like to get those applications vetted before May 15th, because then they get sent to Evanston and then the interview process starts. So really ask all of you, if you have people in your networks, they don't even have to be from Australia. I'm working with someone who reached out to me from Cameroon. Okay, so we've got someone from Cameroon. So if you know somebody in Azerbaijan, or if you know somebody in Uganda, or if you know somebody in Nepal, we can sponsor them. Okay, so this is a global call out, and would love to have your support. Thanks very much.
Thank you. I know we're just a tad over time, but two notices. One is Vale Joe Tucci. So, members, sadly, I also wish to inform you of the death of Dr Joe Tucci from the Australian Childhood Foundation, of which the Rotary Club of Melbourne has a close association. Joe was internationally recognised as a thought leader in the welfare of children, resulting from his extensive research and significant experience in child protection and working therapeutically with children. He was CEO for 28 years and was instrumental in working with the federal government to create the National Centre for Action on Childhood Sexual Abuse. The National Centre was created from the 2017 Royal Commission in relation to institutional responses to child sexual abuse. Dr Joe received the 2019 Vocational Services Award from the club, but the relationship stems back much further than that. The ACF was in fact founded back in 1986 by our club and has a strong local connection to Rotary, especially through ongoing board membership, through Nick Pelham, who's been on the board for 12 years, and before that Ted Garland as Director and Treasurer. Second notice, the Rotary International President Gordon McKinlay is in town on 2nd and 3rd of June. Have a look at the bulletin. It'll have the dates, times, venues, etc. for booking. Welcome to our newest member, Kenza, again. Thanks to all our visitors and guests for attending. Thanks also to MC Karen Kim, Chair of the day, Peter Jones, Reflection past President Robert Fisher, also the lunch and set-up teams for their continuing efforts. Reminder, next week we've got Tony Pearce, Inspector General for Emergency Management, Department of Justice and Regulation, and who's also Director of Board Chair of Emergency Services Foundation. We hope you can make it. And to close today, we have, for the National Anthem, we have Michael Lapina and a violinist, Karen Kim, leading us out. So, over to you.